So, good morning from the other side of the world. Good afternoon to the middle side of the world, and good evening to everybody on the Indian shores. My name is Kabir Bhogilal. Today I'll be hosting a great panel of a discussion, which is going to consist of talking about dyslexia, but talking about advocating, and also talking about how and where people have gone from life strengths with their weaknesses, but made them their strengths and achieved their goals. So I'm going to welcome you all. As I said, my name is Kabir Bhogilal. On behalf of Opening New Horizons, we have started the company around 8 years ago. We work in the advocacy space. We also work for awareness, and we also do a lot of work in assistive technology. So today we have once again joined up with close friends of ours, Maharashtra Dyslexia Association, to host an amazing panel where we're going to have insights from all parts of the world, but also different fields of education, backgrounds, and achievements. So I want to just ask our two panelists to please come on board. I think, yes. And Martin, are you there? Please unmute and turn on your video.
I am indeed. How you doing?
Okay, so there are, there are a lot of people who are still messaging me and say I'm coming in. So I said, okay, please do. I'm waiting. I think before we start, I just want to, say thank you to the fraternity who work in this field, because I think they're always left out in the sense of thank you. And I think it's important that we take cognizance of Maharashtra Dyslexia Association, who have worked tirelessly hard in the field of dyslexia, but also in the field of special education. They have been around for many years, and I think we owe them gratitude that they have achieved the heights in India. I've worked closely with them, with the directors, with the promoters, with the staff, and with the beautiful people who actually have made this whole institution, I think, one of the best I've seen around. So I'm very proud to work with them. So thank you all. Today I have one young lady who's going to be helping me. Please turn on your camera and introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, my name is Shifa Rediwala. I'm a special educator at Maharashtra Dyslexia Association, and I will be the one that will be assisting Mr. Bloomfield. Okay, so thank you so much. Okay, so I think we have quite a lot of people in already. So I think, I'm not going to introduce our panelists, because you know what, I might cut it short. So I'm going to leave it to them to introduce themselves. But we'll start from the other side of the world, and then we'll work towards coming on this side. So, please, I think you are in unmute. Martin, Harvey, why don't you introduce yourself?
Howdy, I'm Harvey Hubble, and we make films. We do a lot of things, but I think the biggest thing is, first of all, I just wanted to thank Kabir and the team for doing this and getting everybody together. I think one of the things we're all in the business of doing is bringing up awareness, and we're all involved in the Brotherhood of Man, and how I heard you mentioning weaknesses and strengths. I mean, isn't that what a human is? Weaknesses
totally
and strength.
Totally agree.
So for people to find how they fit in and where they fit in and what makes them feel good about fitting in, that's kind of the business we're in as well, which I think everybody on this panel is. So we make educational films right now, and we do podcasts ourselves. And my name is Harvey Hubble, and I'm honored to be here.
Thank you so much. Martin, if you unmute and just give a brief introduction.
Yeah, difficult to follow that. I'd just like to echo what Harvey said, and thank you for inviting me on and sparing the time for me. My name's Martin Bloomfield. I run an organization called Dyslexia Bytes. And what we do is we look at dyslexia from an international and an intercultural perspective. I train organizations and teachers in dyslexia, and I teach in various universities around Europe. And I'm about to set up a neurodiversity-focused academic journal. And I echo what Harvey said. I think that there is no way to increase the amount of love in the world by separating ourselves. And what happens often when we label ourselves and others, we separate. And I think what we need to be is more inclusive than that. And so, yeah, absolutely. I'm all for increasing the love.
So, taking the word love, I want to just jump right into it. And then since Martin mentioned it, I want to just say, so what does dyslexia mean to you, Martin? I mean, we have that. I do not want a scientific answer because I know we all know that, but we would like your personal belief on what it is, because I'm sure we all have different views on it. So please.
Wow. Well, so to contextualize my personal belief, one of the things to remember is that wherever you go in the world, they define it differently. So the European Union defines it differently. The American Dyslexia Association defines it differently. The International Dyslexia Association defines it differently. The British Dyslexia Association, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody defines it differently. So one of the things which I like to do is I like to, as you're doing, listen to people rather than define it and then fit people into these definitions. For me, the biggest issues that I have are clearly in executive function. And that's essentially everybody, most people in the world have got a secretary or a personal assistant living inside them. And my personal assistant seems to be on permanent lunch break. And so I find it difficult to organize myself, to understand times, to prioritize things, to switch from one task to another, these things. So this is a very big aspect of dyslexia for me, as well as things like the slow reading speed. But then the other aspects of dyslexia, I couldn't have got my PhD without my dyslexia. I couldn't have got it without the way that I look at the world, without the way that I connect things together, and the way that I see things as interconnected, and the way that I visualize things. So everything that I do, I see, and I follow pathways, and I explore ideas, and I do that in a visual way. So for me, dyslexia has its ups and its downs, as Harvey said, like everybody has ups and downs. My downs tend to be organizational, and my ups tend to be visual and interconnected thinking.
Great. So, Harvey, could you share a bit on that same question? What is your understanding about dyslexia?
Yeah, Martin, that's brilliant, really. And so just because I was born dyslexic doesn't mean I know nothing about no dyslexia, right? So we made a film where we went and asked everybody what dyslexia was, just on the street corner, random people in a little town called New York City, right? In a little town called Manhattan, and across the country. And we'd ask neuroscientists, and I echo Martin. There are scientific explanations for it, but I want to bring it back to what is it like to be a human? Because dyslexics are humans too. So humans are complex, and not all of us have the exact same skills. Some skills that we're lacking in our neuro differences probably define dyslexia, because they can give you a test and say, oh yeah, you're dyslexic, or you're ADHD, or you're ADD, or something like that. So there are these categories. So like Martin, probably I'm not the most, I'm not the person who has the most executive function in the room, but I do believe that we look at things uniquely. That being said, I think everybody looks at things uniquely, and I see it as a gift, but I see being a human as a gift. So I just want to go to one thing. There's time and space, and I don't want to sound really wacky here, but if you started thinking about old European wars, where these doctors knew these soldiers that went in, men that went to war, the doctors knew them in the villages before, and they would know that the kid could do this, could do that, could do this. Then they would come home from the war with these traumatic brain injuries, and they couldn't read or they couldn't speak. So they put these things together, and this is called science. A guy in the United States by the name of Dr. Samuel Orton brings it all together and starts studying these things that happen not in war, but other people who have hard times, who are bright, intelligent people. They can do this and they can do that, but they can't do this or that. They can't read or they can't write or something, or they have a difficulty learning it, where their smart brothers or sisters can. So that was the beginning of the studying of it. And just in the United States, back in, the turn of the century, 1900s, 1920s, 1930s, and it didn't hurt that the Rockefellers, I've probably heard of the family of the Rockefellers, it was good for us that they were dyslexic because they put money into studying it. So in the beginning, it was mostly men have it, boys have it. Now that's not true anymore. Now we know males and females have it. So that's what I'm saying about time and space as we begin to study more stuff. And then it was it's a white person's disease. Well, we know that's not true either. So, wait a minute, the beautiful thing that I just want to say about dyslexia, because what is dyslexia? Is dyslexia doesn't discriminate, doesn't make a difference what your gender is, doesn't what your race or your religion. So it's something that we should care about because it's a human condition. And whether it's good or whether it's bad, I mean, that's the double-edged sword of life. It's like what we want to get out of it. And I do agree with Martin, and there's a lot of stuff written on it. You're processing very different ways, very different thoughts. It's traveling through different parts of the brain, which makes it unique. Anyway, was that a long-winded thing? I'm sorry, Kabir.
It wasn't, but if I may come in on that, you've raised a very interesting point, Harvey. Something that I noticed recently, I was looking at some forms, and on these forms, it was asking what my race was, my ethnicity, and it gave a lot of different options for my ethnicity. It could be white British, white Polish, white traveler, etc., or it could be Black African, Black Caribbean, or it could be a whole range of other things. It could be Pakistani, it could be Indian, it could be etc., etc. And this is great. It's really good that they're inclusive. Then it asked what my gender was, and it gave actually a range of options for my gender. It wasn't just male or female. It gave a range of options, and this is great because it shows that it's being inclusive to people who see themselves as different. And then it asked a question: do you consider yourself disabled, yes or no? Now, this is really interesting because those of us with dyslexia often struggle with this question because it faces us with the idea that we might be disabled through our dyslexia. And we have to make a choice. Am I disabled or am I not disabled? And we're already thinking of dyslexia in terms of disability. Actually, in terms of the options available, in terms of your job, in terms of the way you maybe you go to work, disability or ability or dyslexia is far more impactful and far more immediately impactful than gender or ethnicity most of the time. And yet the options it gives you are far narrower. And they're actually quite negative options because they force you into thinking about yourself in a particular way. And as soon as they do that, they actually make you think of yourself in a negative way. They make you question your ability. And that's a really dark thing. And as Harvey said, we're all a beautiful constellation of good and bad. We're a beautiful constellation of ability, or a beautiful constellation of talents and drawbacks. And to ask this question, do you consider yourself disabled, yes or no? It forces you to think of dyslexia in terms of disability. And that's quite a dark path to go down. And I think it's something which we might want to consider in future if we're interviewing people or setting up human resource departments.
Yo, Martin, now you're going spiritual on me, on all of that. But I do want to just say one thing, that a kid, before they go to kindergarten in the great United States of America, or first grade, or before they go to kindergarten, or Head Start, before, they're home, they're playing with their brothers and sisters, they're playing in the neighborhood, and mom and dad say, that's a smart kid, that's a smart kid. And then they get in front of the teacher and they say, not so much. Now, in the great United States, we have to learn to read kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, and then you're on your own. They don't start teaching you reading anymore. Now you have to read to learn. So first you learn to read, and then it's read to learn. Okay, you guys heard that. And we should go further and further. We should go further based on the abilities. So in a way, are you disabled when you're a child? Nah. But when you get older, wait a minute. Does society disable you? Because they're teaching disability, not your ability to learn, because we've witnessed enough kids, they don't learn here, but they go to this environment and they learn. So are they disabled, or did we disable them?
We certainly disable them. I mean, let's assume you go to a school and a lot of the learning is, you might call it traditional learning, or you might call it linear learning. At the very least, a lot of the learning is reading and writing. Now, if this hinders people with dyslexia in any way, then you've got a structural problem. Because let's say that somebody with dyslexia learns 1 unit of knowledge per lesson. Somebody who reads and writes faster can learn 2 units of knowledge per lesson. That means every lesson, that other person doubles their knowledge compared with the dyslexic person. By the time you get to the exam at the end of your academic life, and they give you an extra half an hour in this exam, that half an hour isn't going to do anything, because you've already had your learning disabled by the school system. You've already had a school system which has basically crushed you. And by the way, when that happens, a number of things happen. First of all, you feel learned helplessness. You think that you just can't do it. And second, you've become, as it were, let's use this word, spiritually alienated. You've become psychologically alienated. And you find that what's happening is that you just don't want to learn. You don't want to go to school. Now, as Harvey said, they teach you the 3 R's, we call it, reading, writing, arithmetic, in the first few years of your school. If you don't get it, then you're in trouble. Even if you do get it, I could tell you now. Now, I could have missed all of secondary school and it wouldn't have hurt my learning. In fact, I'd go further. I would have been a happier child if I'd missed all of secondary school.
And your self-esteem would have been better.
100%.
And you weren't behind on certain things. So it was interesting what you're saying, but there's ways that things are done. Like, let's say that dyslexics, and I'm just generalizing, are good in art classes. Let's say they're good in art classes and they go to art school, and they do sculptures. What did Michelangelo say? I'm just releasing the sculpture from the rock. So they see things and they do that. But you're a great sculptor. There's somebody I can't sculpt, but you can. Somebody who's good at sculpturing, at the end of the exam, at the end of the semester, it's like, take this test. Like, wait, I can't write and read, but give me my grade on my sculpture. So it's an interesting way of how we look at things. And just one other thing that you said before about when you're breaking down, are you African American? You're African Caribbean? Are you African? It's one of the things we've been talking about. I was just talking with Dr. Julie Washington. It's exposure to certain things. So I had a kid I took out to from Bed-Stuy, a neighborhood in New York. We went to get salads, and there was olives on the salad. And he says, "Yo, Hav, why are there grapes on my salad?" But if you don't know the difference between a grape and an olive, it's only because of exposure, and you have to know the words for that. So it's a really interesting thing. And as we were saying, Martin, once you're not getting that foundation in first grade, second grade, third grade, you don't know how to put the words together. So even if you did discover a grape and an olive, written down, I don't know what it is. And if you show me a picture of it, I still don't know what it is. It's one or the other. I got a 50-50 of guessing.
Yeah, 100%. And this is extremely important because it leads into something else. So there was a story that I was reading from a book called Epistemic Injustice by Miranda Fricker. If you like that kind of thing, it's a bit of philosophy, but get into it. It's brilliant. And she tells a story of a load of women who'd had very similar experiences at a college campus in America. And they'd all had men touching them or coming too close to them or looking at them or making comments towards them. They were all very different, but they all sort of existed within the same sphere of something going on. And they wanted to talk about them. They wanted to raise a noise about them, but there was no word. And no one knew what they were going to talk about until one of the women came up with this word, sexual harassment. And suddenly everybody knew what they were talking about. And so what you've pointed out, Harvey, what Harvey pointed out is that often where there's a gap in our ability to describe something, there's a gap in our ability to understand it. And where people with dyslexia are not educated as well as they could be, they're given this gap not only in abilities to describe something or to learn things, but even in their abilities to know what it is they're talking about. The classic example, of course, is Judy Singer, who came up with coined the term neurodiversity many years ago. Now, before that term was coined, nobody really had this idea of what it was they were talking about. There were some vague notions, but it takes the concept to come into reality. It takes the concept to be articulated before people can then start to discuss it and build on it. And I think so what Harvey said is extremely important here.
Now, I was told it was a statement or a quote saying labeling a child as dyslexic does not unlock their potential, restricts their belief in what is possible.
Well,
now I heard the quote and I was like, okay, you know, it's subjective. I mean, obviously, depending on who we are and what we are. But from what you are saying, all of you, I think this is, you know, it can hit home at certain levels.
So if I can come in on that very quickly,
yeah.
What we know, and there have been about 15 years of study into this, longitudinal study, academic study, hundreds, if not thousands, I can't remember the exact figure of children being studied and students being studied. What we know is that if the kids themselves or those around them label them in negative ways, that is, label them as deficient or label them as having some kind of negative condition, then their educational outcomes, that is, that the grades they get, and their mental health outcomes, that is, how they feel, are lower. That is, they get lower grades and they feel worse about themselves. They have worse mental health problems. Now, you just said, if we label them dyslexic, let's do a very quick word association game. Dysregulation, dystopia, dysentery, dyslexic. This prefix to the word already tells kids that there's something they can't do. It labels them by their inability. Now that is crushing. Psychologically, they might not realize it, but it's crushing. Harvey, you were talking earlier that people are now talking about it not so much as a learning difficulty, but as a learning difference. In Germany, they've just changed the word from, and my German pronunciation is terrible, so forgive me, Leserechtschreibschwäche to Leserechtschreibschwierigkeit. Very difficult words. But essentially what it means is they've changed it from reading and writing weakness to reading and writing difficulty. They still haven't caught up with the International Dyslexia Association, for instance.
Yeah, and I also think that, you know, the words have changed for, I think, over a decade. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the words have changed. I started talking about learning difficulties, then it went into learning difficulties, then it was learning disabilities. There's so many assimilations to the words and how you perceive. And as you're rightly saying that when you look at a child and you say that, you know what, you have a learning one part, and then you say disability, right? You know, and then we start going down a different path. And I, you know, in India many years ago, this was a problem. When I was in school, you know, there was all kinds of, the issue of dyslexia was not a problem because no one knew the word, but there was issues that, you know what, he's a failure. He's a no-gooder and he's just, you know, messing around in class and he's spending more time with the principal's office. So, you know, and it was obviously a manner of speaking about dyslexia, but not speaking, if you understand what I'm saying, right? So it's you're saying that, you know what, I'm trying to explain to you that, as you rightly said, I cannot do something. Can you help me? And he's like, no, you can't do it. You're useless. So, it was one of those questions. So I just wanted to know, from Harvey, when you were in school or college, I mean, how was this addressed, or was it not addressed? The issue of being, different.
I want to go back and hopefully what I'm going to say is connected to what you're asking me. Go figure. So what is that great movie made in the last 10 years? It's an Indian movie about dyslexia, and it had stars. It had the stars in it.
It's called Tare Zameen Par. That was the Indian film.
Okay, so when I got to meet the director and the actor in that, and I saw the film and I loved it. So now, enough about you. Let's talk about me. So you asked me, what was it like? So here we are, three guys on planet Earth, right? And we're all wired differently. Newsflash, everybody's wired differently, right? Agreed. So in that film, like, this kid is very creative and fun to be around, right? And always getting into some trouble and a little mischief. Well, okay, that movie was about me when I was a kid, except it happened to be in the United States with about as much knowledge. People would do tests, and there was other things that happened too. I was born left-handed, but they didn't want me to be left-handed, so they wanted me to be right-handed. So, and I'm not, listen, I love educators. Any nation's greatest resource, any product of our planet is our youth, right? And people that go into education have empathy, and they are good souls. I mean, nobody's going in it to make $1 million off the education. I'm going to make.
We hope. We hope.
Well, we hope. Yeah, you're interesting. But now that they go into it, but so the interesting thing that happens is the teachers may not be trained, and they weren't trained when I was in kindergarten. When I was in first grade, they weren't. They wouldn't have changed me from left-handed to right-handed, which gave me dysgraphia. Maybe I would have been dysgraphic anyhow. I'm dyslexic. But then on top of that, they taught me to read by color, which is something that they tried. And then the reds are going to be this sound and the blues are going to be this sound. Wait a minute, just show me phonics, man. Just break me down and show me how the code works. So when you're asking me what was my childhood like, and I'm going to go back to what Martin said. See, what happens is, this is how it happens in school. For most of the time, you start off in this grade, you go to that grade, and you travel. I live in a small town. I grew up in a small town. So you live with these same kids all the time. You have different teachers, and the teachers might have a note on you, and they're like, oh boy, okay, he's bad handwriting, bad reading and writing. Oh, a wise guy, he's a troublemaker. Oh, he's going to act out in class. So this all begins to come around. So the first thing that the kids say to the new teachers, like, oh, he doesn't read very well. Oh, he doesn't do this or do that. So I'm no different than most of these other people. Do I become a discipline problem later on in school? Sure. Do I go to college? Oh boy, I got kicked out of a lot of schools, colleges, and at one time I handed in my paperwork. I mean, this is my journal. This is how I write. And the teacher says, whose paper is this? He says, by the time you get to college, you're going to know your punctuation. You're going to know your spelling. You're going to know this and that. I'm going to ask you to leave the class. And kicks me out second day of class after he read my papers.
You're very special. You're very special. I see.
well, they kicked me out. Years later, I won like an Emmy for writing.
Well, there we go.
But I was writing small sound bites. I adapted to what I could do. And so I think that's the big thing. But also to the point we've been talking about is the self-esteem. I mean, I felt that I could do things. I felt I couldn't do things in public school, but later I knew what I could do, and I felt I could do them. And that's one of the reasons I work in this space and make the films that we make and bring about the awareness and do the podcast, is because we want to be able to, because it's a journey for so many people. And we all go through that same journey, just like me and that little boy in the Indian film is like, all of a sudden, wait, that's my story. That's everybody's story. So what are we doing, and why aren't we doing it better to help out all of our all of our students and all of our young people. Go figure. I mean, because if you know better, you do better, right? That's what everybody says.
Yeah. So, Javi, I want to just say that, you know what, I think, and obviously Martin is going to bring in another aspect, but I think I grew up my education life in England. So I think perhaps Martin and I might have some similarities, but it's interesting to see that there is so much commonality with education across the globe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the idea of that you cannot do something, and that means you cannot do something. It doesn't matter how you try to do something, but you just cannot do it. And as you said, that book which went on from teacher to teacher, you know, you have your friends, you're like, he couldn't do there. I don't think he's going to do it here. I just want to warn you. So Martin, I want to bring you in. I was in boarding school, so I don't know. I had a different set of, I think, supporters, but we were all part of a community. So Martin, please share a little bit on, it may not be school, it might be something else.
Well, no, I mean, it's a great question. Coming in on what you've both said. First of all, you said there's a great deal of commonality in education across the globe. I mean, there are differences, as you say, but one of the reasons there's commonality is that all governments want to prove that they're good so that they can get elected again. And the way that you prove that you're good is by measuring yourself against other people. And what happens is, in order to measure yourself against other people in education, you need standardized testing. And standardized testing doesn't always work for non-standard brains. And so dyslexics are the collateral damage in governmental attempts to get themselves re-elected by climbing up the education league tables, essentially. Now, when I was a kid, I had a very similar experience to Harvey's. And by the way, Harvey, how dare you steal my handwriting? Something that I noticed. But yeah, I had a very similar experience. I was held back a couple of times. I dropped out and went back in again. But particularly what I remember is, so we were educated in the same country, Kabir, and yet we're slightly different generation. Let's gently put this. I'm Generation X, and I believe you might have been a generation after me. And I remember growing up in the 70s when I was at primary school, and there was a class in primary school called the remedial class. And the remedial class, I now know that the word remedial comes from the same word as remedy. But at the time, all the kids thought that remedial meant somehow contagiously stupid or unchangeably disgusting or something, because we never went near the kids from the remedial class. We thought they were like lepers from the old biblical times and that you don't go close to them. And they were ostracized by people like me. And by the way, there, but for the grace of God, went I. I mean, I escaped this kind of thing because people just thought I was stupid. And so on the one hand, I was labeled stupid. And I had to go through all sorts of mental gymnastics to tell myself that there's a difference between being clever and being intelligent. And I told myself that being clever is the ability to learn things and to do well in exams, but being intelligent is the ability to think for yourself, etc. And I told myself that I was intelligent, even though all my grades proved that I wasn't clever. And so I was fortunate in a way that I was simply looked upon as stupid, because if I hadn't been, if they'd maybe labeled me as dyslexic in those days, I'd have been in the remedial class. I'd have been ostracized from all the other kids. I wouldn't have the friendship circles that I'd had. I wouldn't have had nearly the opportunities to go on to any other school. I'd have been, I dread to think what would have happened to me, to be honest with you.
You know, I want to just quickly, before you, you talk about going on and ostracizing, I want to say, the key word is self-confidence. I want to know, because you both mentioned something, I mentioned something. Martin, quickly tell me, self-confidence, how are we going to deal with that? Because I see kids today, and, I've done a lot of talks on self-confidence, self-esteem.
Yeah. And
there is a lot of hurdles that we have to jump through. Yeah. I just want to, just a quick, round up on self-confidence, self-esteem. What do people do? And I'm talking about not only kids, I'm talking about parents, because they have their own issues which they project onto their children, as parents do. But I think that if you could give a few on that, and Harvey as well on self.
Well, very quickly, because I feel that Harvey and I might say the same thing, but I'm sure he'll say slightly more as well. There are two things. First of all, you need the environment. And the environment is very, very important. If you have a supportive environment, like parents who love you anyway, then or parents who believe in you anyway, or parents who think that although it's difficult, it's okay and you'll get there, then that's so crucial. And I mentioned this word, which is the other thing. We need love, because love is the one thing that binds. It's the one thing that supports. It's the one thing that gives people hope. Now, on a slightly more abstract and academic sort of way of looking at it, there's something called learned helplessness that a guy called Seligman came out with in, I think it was 67 or 68. And learned helplessness is essentially, I don't know if anyone's seen Where's Wally or Where's Waldo in America, these books where you've got to spot this guy in red and white stripes. Now, if you see a Where's Wally for the first time and other people get it first and you go, oh, right, where is it? And they point him out and you go, oh, yeah. And then you do it another time and other people see him first and you go, where is it? And they point him out and you go, oh, I see him now. By the time you get to the third time, you'll believe that you can't do it. You'll be the kind of person who goes, I'm not very good at this. This is called learned helplessness. And it happens very, very quickly. And so we need to be able to address that. We need to be able to reframe what's happened, to reframe the way that people think of themselves. They think of themselves as, I can't do that, rather than we didn't show you how to do it correctly, or we didn't help you correctly. So, for instance, I went through school believing I was never going to get anywhere because I was the bottom of the class in almost everything. And I say this next bit not out of arrogance. I genuinely don't mean it like that. But now I've got a PhD. That's not because I'm super clever. That's because essentially I was taught badly when I was a kid. I was taught inappropriately. And as I got older, I realized because of the people around me that I could do it and that all I had to do was find my way. And so that's where I'd approach it from.
Okay. So Harvey, could you just share something on self-esteem, self-confidence in, I guess, in the days of school, college, or what's your view?
Well, I'm just a simple country filmmaker, but I do know that people have been arguing about nature and nurture for a long time, yes. And I'm going to, of course, again echo Martin. There's groups that have started recently. See, again, in different cultures, in the culture of dyslexia, we all have these conversations and we can just zip around the planet to all these things. But in different places, different things happen at different times. I'm going back to time and space. So there was this organization that started in the United States called Decoding Dyslexia. And it's about parents that know that their kid's smart, but maybe not this way, or maybe, and the kids can learn. See, there's another thing that's going on over here. And that's if you have a lot of money, we're going to your kid that's not learning over in this school, this public school, we're going to take this kid out and put him in a special school. And guess what? Kid's going to learn. But not everybody can get there because it's $50,000 a year to get there. And same with next year and the year after that. And the year after that. The other alternative, if we don't want to just, I'm going to tell you something, the United States is great. We incarcerate more people per capita than any other nation. You guys can't touch us on that. And guess what? The people who are in prison, they can't read. So and teachers who are nice people, as I've said before, they say, excuse me, Harvey, I'm going to have to fail you this year. I mean, they say it. If you listen to the language, they fail you. So you might fail their class, but if you take that same kid and you put him, this conversation is about self-esteem. When you take this kid from this public school and you put him over here and then they can learn, what do you think is going to happen to their self-esteem? We see it. We see the studies all the time.
Okay.
So it's like, hey, you know what? I love you two guys, and you guys are my best friends. I'm going to send you a plant. I'm going to send you both plants, And then Martin's going to like call Kabir, like, hey, what's going on, man? And like, how's that plant? It's like, oh, you know, one of you guys is going to say, the plant's doing great. The other one's going to say, it's not doing great. It's like, when the other one's going to say, did you water it? Did you give it sunshine? You know, did you give it plenty of love? I mean, you know, Kareem Walker was just talking about that. As educators, to give love, which is another way of saying give love and respect to this child who's learning differently, and teach the way that learns. So it's the self-esteem. It is a crapshoot, gentlemen. It is when you sent this kid off in our case, they go out the door and they get a little yellow school bus, and like they're going to teach them how to read over there, because it's not the parent's job. Yes, it is, to teach your kid how to read. You know, you're supposed to do your poems and your poetry and your storybooks and stuff when the baby is growing in the belly. When the baby comes out, you know, I'm not going to talk to my baby. My baby don't talk to me. I'm not going to talk to my baby. But no, you're supposed to start giving them our language, and you're supposed to be showing them letters A, B, C in our case. You know, take a look at these things and get them used to it. But nobody's talking to us. Nobody taught us how to be parents to teach kids how to read, and nobody taught our teachers how to do it. So you want to know about self-esteem? It's a crapshoot, gentlemen.
And brilliantly put, Harvey, brilliantly put. And you brought two things together, and this is fantastic. This is really interesting. So, well, actually, three things. So the first thing is, what is a test for? A test isn't to fail a child. A test is to know what I need to do as a teacher. A test is for me as the teacher to think, right, this is what I've got to do now. It's not to look at a child and go, you failed. Then Harvey talked about parenting. A great way to look at being a teacher is as a parent. A teacher is, in one respect, a parent, and a class is a family. Now, a parent would never fail a child. A parent would never do that to a child. And so, probably a parent should never fail a child. And so one of the things we have to do is we have to re-look at what we're doing when we test people, and what we as teachers, if you're a teacher, are, and your relationship to the kids. If you look at yourself as it were, the judge and the jury, and the kids on trial with these exams, then that's one way of looking at an exam. If you look at yourself as for instance, more of a parent figure, and a test or an exam helps you understand what you need to do better or differently, then that's a completely different kettle of fish, completely different game.
Well, you know, I'm just a filmmaker here, and I don't want to, and I make films on education, but I'm not an expert on this. I know you guys say I should be an expert. I'm not an expert on this, but if now in the science of reading, everybody gets a test, and then we find out Kamir knows this, and Martin knows this, and Harvey knows this, and geez, Harvey's a little bit behind these guys, and Kamir's in the first group, and then Martin and I are in the second group for a while, and then I still don't know as much as I should know, and I fall into the third group. So going to what Martin said earlier of well, if we're all learning different, but Harvey reads slower than you guys, so I have more time studying this and learning this, and then I'm tested every X amount of days. Well, guess what? Eventually I move back to group 2. And then eventually I can even move up to group 1, because we're taking more time of what we don't have, and not expecting that it was all given to us, and we know it, and branding the child for the person being the person wrong. And I made a face, Martin, and I'm sorry, when we're talking about parents, a lot of times we're going back to self-esteem and we're talking about parents, and this is a great conversation, gentlemen. So sometimes the parents can just say, well, honey, we just don't read. We just don't do it. So we've already broken the parent. So once you break the parent, it's easy to break the kid. I mean, hey, we make money off of putting people in prison in the United States, you know? So the bottom line is, you know, personally, I want to live in a world, the future I want to live in is a world where the kid who's sitting in a prison cell never went there. Maybe he or she has the code to unlock cancer in their brain, or maybe they can make us good, clean energy, and we're not hurting our planet as much. So really what it is with this is the self-esteem, going back to the self-esteem and going back to teaching the parent, letting the parent know, if the parent can read and the parent feels good about themselves, they're going to have children that they care about and are different. So it's really a stacked game, and we really have to invest in everybody, because the guys that are in prison, what kind of job do they have? They're going to hit your mom over the head and take her pocketbook. They're going to, they're going to do the same to your grandmother and to you guys and to me guys, because they don't have any options. Because they can't read. They can't fill out that form you were talking about. How can you fill out that form if I can't read? It's like, who makes these rules up?
And one of the things we know is that we know the pathways from school to prison. We know this. And we know that it's really easy to fix, incredibly easy to fix. And one of the ways it's easy to fix is you teach primary school teachers or kindergarten teachers. This is basic. Yeah. It's not difficult to teach them. I do it all the time. It's a piece of cake. And yet, it's not universal. It's not widespread. It's only one or two either enlightened schools or schools that have got a budget that they need to use up or something along those lines that do this kind of thing. I was involved fairly recently, and I don't want to say in what capacity, but I was involved with something called the Dyslexia Bill, which was trying to get universal screening in primary schools for kids in England. And it didn't get through Parliament. It didn't get through the Parliament because it ran out of time, which is just tragic. But we know that if you get screening, then people know how to deal with kids or how to teach them correctly. We also know that if you teach primary school teachers know what to do. But more than that, more than knowing how to teach, they know how to create the environment. So the environment is what's really key. We know, for instance, that acceptance of who we are is really interesting. I was in Germany 2 days ago. Well, yesterday, actually. I came back yesterday. But I was teaching in Germany 2 days ago. And there was a group of people, and some of whom were neurodiverse, some of whom were gender non-conforming, some of whom considered themselves disabled. They said to me afterwards, and by the way, this is a normal class. It wasn't a special class in any way. They were saying to me afterwards that this was the first time they'd ever been accepted in their education. And I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely horrified that these kids, and these are now 20-year-old, 21 years old, these kids had been essentially blamed for being themselves their entire time through school. And if you're blamed for being yourself, then as Harvey said, it's no surprise that you've got low self-esteem.
Well, I feel better about myself if I can tell you that you're lesser than me, and that's what we teach in school, you know. So I mean, we have to really evolve. You know, we have to evolve on a lot of different levels. So I just want to say, when you're talking about the universal screening, it's really interesting because I think, you know, in California they went through it. Again, don't quote me on my number, 7 or 9 times, and it was no. And so what's the marketing thing? They got to say no 9 times before they say yes. And yes is the important one. So you guys are working on the same stuff we're working on, right? And it's you know, it's not a race of who's going to get there. It's just like we're all moving forward. So the next thing is, I did my shameless plug. So we're doing a film, and it's hilarious because it's backwards. And I'm dyslexic. So the bottom line is we're doing a film on the science of reading and how to win the reading wars. And so a scientist, Julie Washington, who I mentioned before, she goes, I don't like this word, the reading wars. And she, you know, she talks about, she's much more eloquent about it than I am. And, but she says, it's really like a revolution. Now, everybody, let's talk about that. It's evolution, revolution. This is what's going on our whole entire planet right now, because we've been reading for a while. We got electricity, you know, we're able to stay up and read. And it's interesting that I look at both of you guys, you got books behind you guys, and you're both dyslexic folk, but, you know, dyslexics like books. They like stories. I mean, who doesn't like a story? I mean, a long time ago, we sat by a fire, all of us, you know, and our ancestors were sitting around and we were telling stories about, yeah, I did this, I did that, and we chased this, and we did that, and you know, and it's a story. Everybody likes that. And guess what? We begin to measure ourselves to where we are in the story. And this is going back to self-esteem. Who else puts us into the hero place other than ourselves? And how do we grow our own ego and our own soul? Yes, brother.
Can I come in on this, Harvey?
You can. I'm loving you. Just tell me. Come in on it.
I love books. I love stories. But I find that people often give me gifts of books because they know I love them. But I don't have the heart to say thanks, but I'll never get around to reading it. I can't read that. It takes me. I read Frankenstein fairly recently. Great. I love it.
Mary Shelley.
A year and a half, nearly 2 years to read that book. Somebody gave me this. A really good friend of mine in France gave me this. And I thank her so much. Let me just open it up and show it to you. There are no words in it at all. It's a story. There's a guy called Lynd Ward who was writing in the early part of the 20th century. And he wrote stories, but there were no words in them. There were woodcuts, there were pictures. They were essentially comic books, but they were really interestingly written comic books. Now, the amount of knowledge and learning I get from this, because you engage with the art, you engage with the illustration, actually more than you engage with the squiggles that turn out to be words. And so you go through this at your own pace. You look deeply at the art, and you get such a lot of learning from it. And it's not a textbook to learn from, but with all good stories, you learn.
And I have to, sorry, I have to jump in there quickly, because the way you're showing that book, a friend of mine gifted me a book. And, when it comes to reading, it's obviously, might have all the books, but I mean, when you gifted a book with a big volume and the book looks even bigger, then you get haunted that you don't want to even touch it. But comes another one, okay? And it has exactly the same kind of what you're talking about. Pictures, you can pick it up at any stage and you can read it. And I was like, wow, this is what every dyslexic child should have. Something to engage with text, something that gives you knowledge, and something that you could relate to perhaps.
And something that makes us realize that reading a book like that isn't a shameful thing to do.
Agreed.
So we believe that it's shameful. I mean, I went through school life ashamed of myself for reading large print books and picture books, as though that was childish. It shouldn't be childish. It should be looked upon with as much love and honor as reading anything.
Well, the earliest written language was cave art and hieroglyphics, and there were pictures. This is, again, I'm going back to there's the animal, here's the spear, here's what we did, And now if you take a look at how we all grow and evolve and what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. Charles Schwab, you guys know Schwab as a businessman in the United States. He loved comic books. He got a lot of his information from comic books. I think he was really good at numbers, whereas Branson, I think, is a big picture guy, doesn't do numbers as well. So we think of all of these great people, and that's something I think that's really important to tell our parents of dyslexics. And remember, it's a genetic thing. So if somebody knows that mama, papa, grandma, grandpa, somebody was dyslexic along the way, and they would get by. It's just that our society is a little bit different now. You have to fill out the forms that Martin's talking about. Like, I don't even know what these things are. Even if I can read them, I don't even know how, and then I don't know how to write them, So we think about this place of where we are on this. And I want to go back to what you were saying before, Kabir, about school and when we're starting out and gifts. I tell you, if I told you guys that I heard voices, people say, that's crazy. Don't tell people, do you hear voices? That's one thing. But like when I'm a kid, I'm hearing big band music, I'm hearing voices. And what do I do? What do I do for a living? I make films and I write sound bites. Somebody should say this about here. This music should be playing around here. So inside of our mind is the same storytelling that humans do. And going back to, is it a good story or is it a bad story? Am I the hero? Am I the loser in this story? Is it the self-esteem comes back here again? How do we do this? And this inner dialogue is going on with all humans at all times. Somebody gives you a book, I can't read that. Or it's like, I'm going to get to it. It's going to take me a while. I mean, the way I get through all of that is I read like 9 books at the same time. I don't know when I ever finish books, but I'm always constantly picking at different parts of the house. I'm reading here, I'm reading there, reading over here. And it's kind of like a survey, cleaning my palate just like a couple words and some thoughts and a page or two or page or three of this. And it allows me to grow and think. And I mean, I would love to have read Mary Shelley for a year of Frankenstein, because it's about creation, and it's about man overstepping his bounds.
And what a year and a half that was. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really did. It took a long time, but that didn't mean I didn't like it. It just meant that I enjoyed it deeply for a long time.
Billy.
Sorry. Please.
Billy Bob Thornton, who is in one of our films, Dyslexia the Movie, talks about just reading Faulkner over and over again and things that he relates to in the same books, reading the same books that he likes because he understands them and he hears them and it's an interpreting. I'm like, I mean, how many people have read the same books, whether it's, whether they go into Shakespeare or, religious verses or anything, you're going back over and you're cogitating it and you're listening to it. And you know what they do with memory now? What they know about memory is it's smell, it's sight, it's hearing. Oh, this is how it was over at my mother's house when this happened. This is how it was when I was a young person over here, and this is what happened here. So it brings back, there's all these different parts of the mechanics of the brain. And the point is, dyslexics can learn to read, can learn to write. They just need to be tested a certain way to find out what the deficits are and what the assets and what the deficits are in this human being. And how do we teach towards that child, not that child, but that particular child.
Yeah. So I want to, as time is coming to its end, I want to just quickly ask, we are, obviously we are all advocating for the same goal. We might be doing it differently. I would like to know, just, in a few words from both of you, I mean, what is it that you strongly believe that advocacy for, obviously, parents and what they should be believing, and for children, and obviously dyslexia as a whole, I mean, that's a given. I mean, we've been talking about it for the last hour, but what do you believe the parents, and what do you believe for the children? What should we, and what have you done in your lives that we should perhaps emulate, and people out there in the public should emulate, and should not fall on their face flat, because, a lot of us have, I once upon a time said, what, I'm going to, come back to India and I'm going to help children who are dyslexic. And the first response was, oh, that's a thankless job, Kabir, well done. And I'm like, oh, that's great. So I have, and then that was someone in England, I will never mention it. But the point was, it was amazing, because that just spurred me on to be and what I am doing today. So I would just like Martin and Harvey, quick, about how we talk about advocacy and what do we steam it towards for the child and what we do for the parents. So please, Martin.
So very quickly, I'll go first, and I'll leave the end to you, Harvey. I would advocate, first of all, trying to come up with an inclusive and a non-disabling language around dyslexia, that we don't talk about it in terms of difficulties or deficits. We don't use this dis. We talk about it in terms of individuality, in terms of needs, and in terms of abilities, like we talk about everybody in terms of needs and abilities. And most importantly, for many of us, it's kind of late. So for me, I was, I've gone through that. There's very little that can be done for me. But I've learned from that. And so what I can try to do is create a world for the next generation, which is loving. And I'm coming back to this again and again and again, that the one thing we do is we love, and we create love. And even one of the things about love, by the way, is that love isn't the thing that makes you happy. Love isn't that happy thing that people have. One of the great examples of love, in fact, is sacrifice. And so we love, and love is an active, powerful thing that is there and that creates for others. And that if we can do that, then perhaps we'll stop the next generation or the generation after that from going through the trauma, and I use that word very, very wisely, from going through the trauma of education.
Yes. Harvey?
Well, Martin, I got to say that you're the, my second brother I've talked to in the last week who's been using the word love when it comes to education, right? And now when we're talking about the brotherhood of man, here again, we're talking about humanity. We're talking about humanity. So I'm not excluding my mother, my wife, my sisters, and my daughters, you know? So, but because it's those words again, because words are powerful of how they sculpt things. But I think, you know, we're off to a good start. And again, Kabir, I just want to thank you again and your team for bringing this together. So you asked the question, what can we do? Well, one thing is we can stay in touch. And because there's this thing called the internet, all the kids are using it, you know, Facebook and however we just stay in touch. So now we're able to see what's going on. And we've already been talking about, hey, Martin, you guys are doing that over there. We're doing this over here. So you begin to see that. Now, I mentioned about decoding dyslexia, which started in one state and spread across 50 states really fast, and then went to Canada. And it's regular folk, it's regular moms. You know, if you want to say a mom is a regular person, but they're going to do what? They're going to use love. They're fueled by love. That's a powerful, powerful thing. So, but they get connected and they're like, what are you doing over there in this state? What are you doing in this state? We're doing this, we're doing that. So the same thing that we can continue doing that and keep learning from each other. I mean, the film we made, Hopeville, which is just coming out right now, follows we go to kids in a first grade class in a city called Waterbury, Connecticut. 110,000 people live in the town. They speak 60 languages. Imagine being a first grade teacher trying to teach a kid how to read and write. I mean, these people are heroes. So I think the important thing is, and we're talking about stories. So in filmmaking, there's like six, I don't know. There's a lot of films out on reading and learning. I think it's important to watch all of them. To listen to my friend Emily Hanford, her podcast, who breaks it down. And we want to educate our population. And who is that? It's policymakers. You were talking about Parliament before. Our policymakers, our elected officials. You know, they're not our leaders, they're our elected officials. They're working for us, right? In our country, school superintendent, board of education, principals, teachers, the parents, all the people, we just want to be together and keep educating everything what we're doing. And I think advocate is all we want to do. Am I right?
Yep, totally agree. And I think that gives it a good closure on the subject in the sense of advocacy, because I think we have I think it's for me, it's a calling. I don't know if you both agree. We have struggled. We have made it through. We have succeeded in our own businesses. We have succeeded in our own selves. Self-esteem is a topic I touched upon because I believe very strongly on self-esteem and self-confidence. And I think that it's very important that people start understanding themselves, then trying to understand the world. First understand yourselves and then start dealing with the world. Because once you get yourself and you understand your strengths and your abilities, I think that is a key in my understanding. But, you know, I think, you know, there is no summary of this. There's no summary of this talk because this talk can go on all night. It can go on all day. It can go on all morning. So I think I'm not going to conclude it, but I think that if we could do more of this, it would be great. And we use people from all around the world coming together and saying, look, we fight for a cause. The cause is, and I have one of the taglines in the company I run. It says, every child has a unique ability, but I use it. It's so open. It could be a child, it could be an adult, it could be anybody. I think that the ability that you have within yourself is very important. I think what you grow from what you have and the self-esteem and self-confidence that we talk about, I think this is huge when you look at the rest of the world. And we have heard from both of you where you're talking about so many other things about the world treating you, and then you have to think about you treating the world and what you get from it. I think if you know, it might be a very small summary, but I think this is something that I would definitely take away. But you know, it is time, and you know, and we have overshot as usual. But hey, you know, we're dyslexic; we're allowed to overshoot, right? It's allowed. So I'm doing it with liberal meaning to it. So I want to give it back to Shiva if she's there, and let's see if there's any questions that we can quickly answer. If three of us could answer any questions, please put up your hands quickly, and we can answer. Or obviously our email addresses are there. So Shiva, if you make it a full view for everybody, and then if anybody wants to put up their hand, and then please let them turn their video and their audio on. So if you make it into the normal view, please. So everybody's there. Okay, thank you. So if anybody has a question, please put up their hand, and you will open your screen and say. Is there anything in the chat, Shiva? I've not had a look at it, but you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just checking. I think we should give them a moment for.
Okay.
Give it a moment for the questions to come in.
You know, we have talked about a lot of things in a very short period of time, and as I said, we have so much more we could ever talk about on this. And I think it's a conversation that would never end. At least for three of us, it would never end. It's our life. It's what we have done and what we have achieved, and where we have failed. We are proud to say that, you know what, we have done this, but we have also come out of it. I think for every parent, for every student out there, I think it's very important that you understand that believe in yourself. I mean, I say this every talk I do hold. I think believe in yourself, and there are strengths. You find them, get to know your weaknesses, as we had when you both spoke, and you get to know your weaknesses, and then you start working on how to, I would say, the word scaffolding in England is used a lot. So Martin, I'm sure he'll understand what I'm saying, but you start working one upon another, and you start thinking about how we can go forward. Okay, I think Dia has a question.
Yeah, hello, great talk and really enjoyed it. Hello. So I wanted to ask something completely different. I saw and I couldn't help but notice that in the chat box, and I think Martin referred to it, there's a note-taking tool which popped up. So my question is, with all the challenges that you have been facing and all the kind of help that you have got, how has AI made a difference? And I just wanted to know from both of you. Thank you.
Great question, dear. Great question. It's a double-edged sword, like all tools are double-edged swords. On the one hand, yes, it's got note-taking tools, and it can pick out the things that are relevant and all sorts of wonderful things. It can allow you to create something. Yeah. But there is an aspect of inequality factored into AI. So, I mean, on the one hand, AI doesn't recognize people equally. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, in order to use AI, you have to be AI literate in the first place. Mm-hmm. And those people who come from perhaps lower socioeconomic demographics won't be AI literate. Mm-hmm. And so you'll notice that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Yes. Yes. And so those who create AI, and actually I do a lot of work teaching ethics to the people who create AI. Those who create AI have got to somehow factor in the fact that there is inequality. They've got to understand how to get around that inequality. Mm-hmm. And how to create artificial intelligence with, as it were, with ethical standpoints that are universal, that everybody can accept, and that are inclusive of all different types, including neurotypes.
Mm-hmm. So socioeconomic equality and making it ethical. That's what I'm getting from you. Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Well, I'd like to say something else about AI. First of all, I think what Martin said was brilliant, that you have to be AI literate. So I have my compensating mechanisms. People I work with, write and talk to AI, and AI spits something out first. But you have to be able to read it and make sure that's what you believe. Now, I think I said that this is a revolution, and what I mean by that, I mean, now we're running into the square with pitchforks and torches and guns, But what I was taught the other day is when television first came into our life, it went off at a certain time at night, and then Ted Turner shows up, and then it's on all day. There's a remote control. You have to get up and turn the channel. Now you can just sit there. Now you have a remote control. But that's the revolution. And now we don't even watch it on a big screen. Now we watch it on here. So it changes. So I'm wondering about what AI is going to do in our world. And I'm wondering if I tell a student to be able to think for themselves. I mean, listen, I go like this. If you ask me a question, just before, hey, Martin, I got a crush on you. And, just before I came, I looked up Martin. I'm a god over here on Mount Olympus. I can just look up something and I can just find people and I can do this. But what if AI stops? See, I believe in education, and I don't know if I'm not answering your question. I believe in a different kind of education. I think go take the kids outside to the park, to go play in the stream, go catch a tadpole, go climb a tree, go climb a tree. I'm not sure if AI can help me, climb a tree. I think I have to experience that for myself. So I think that there's a place for AI in this world, and I think that everything it should say, if I'm doing my report and I'm giving you my report, I think I should say this report was not written by Harvey, but it was written by AI. Harvey might have asked one or two questions. So I'm worried about the revolution and the evolution of the human being. With something like, because it's this machine that's doing the writing for us. I mean, because we know
thinking for us, which can be,
it's doing the thinking for us. We know what happened when we're giving our food over, at least in the United States. People they don't eat with their families at nighttime. They're going to stop by. They're going to pick up food that's processed, made by scientists and food engineers. It's not made by our grandmothers. It's not made by farmers, and we know eating whole. So you got my point 100%.
I got it totally. Yes.
Because the whole food, you're eating the whole food that's good for you. So when you're out there learning and living, I don't know if AI is gonna help us. There's a place where they can help us, but I don't want it in our schools. I think it should be banned in our schools.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. I just wanted that viewpoint from both of you. Thanks a lot. Thank you for answering my question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, we have some questions in the chat box.
Yeah, and I think Martin responded to it as well. Yes.
Yeah.
There's one of them, not to.
Yeah, there's another one.
Yeah.
Okay, there is. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to read it?
Yeah. It's from Sheila Sayed.
Okay.
She's asking what strategies we can give to parents in terms of empowering the children and accepting better. Recently, I have done a couple of parenting workshops.
One of the things. So I'll go back to this course I was just giving in Germany, where I had people come up to me and say they'd never felt accepted before. And one of the reasons is that they said they noticed me, as you might not have noticed me. They noticed me stimming the entire time. They noticed things that I was doing, and I was obvious and I was open about it, and I was proud about it, because I know that I've reached where I've reached and that I can go further, and that I don't think it's shameful to be different. I don't think it's shameful to need help in some areas. I don't think it's shameful that within a group, everybody needs help in some areas and other people don't need help in some areas. And so one of the things that I would do is I would model how proud you can be of yourself, regardless of how different you are. And and to show other people that it's okay to be who they are. That's the groundwork. It lays the groundwork for everything else, for the skills, the techniques, the methodologies. But before anything else, we lay the groundwork to be okay by saying, look at me. There is no such thing as perfect. I don't know what that could possibly be. There is, here I am in front of you doing what I do in some position of, let's say, authority. And look how many nooks and crannies I have. Look how many different spikes and different angles I have. And as I said, we are all constellations of frozen planets and gas giants and burning planets and beautiful stars and satellites and all sorts of things.
So is there anybody else with a question? or we should wrap it up.
I have a question as well. Like I said, I am an educator, and one thing that I noticed was the mention of love and love in the education system as well. So how do you think teachers can be more accepting? What are some things that we can do to make sure our students feel accepted in our classrooms? Because we are trying, but I feel when it comes from somebody who's experienced not being accepted, I'd be able to understand better what I can do as a teacher as well.
You know, I just want to just jump in and go back to some of the stuff we're saying. And I know I've thanked you guys before, but this has been a great conversation because who are we now? We all know each other. So this is a global village. So this is important because, and now when the other young lady was asking about AI, so what we have right here, again, with technology, with the internet, you can talk to all of these parents all over the place. You can talk to all of these educators all over the place, and you can ask that same exact question, which is a brilliant question. But love and empathy, just understanding that somebody struggles. Now, I can tell you something. I'm going to tell you a universal truth. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. This is for the older people in the audience, not for the younger people in the audience. Everybody can remember their favorite teacher. And it's a double-edged sword. Being a teacher is a very brave occupation because everybody also remembers their worst teacher. And so every time the teacher wakes up and goes into the arena, the classroom, they are going in as a loving ninja, right?
Nicely put.
It's a loving ninja. You have to look, how's this coming at me? But if you give it love, and that's where the empathy comes in. And instead of, and I guess this is what Martin, Kabir, and Harvey are going to say, probably the same thing is like, come on, you could try harder. You do better than this. I know you're smarter than that. That's not the kind of answer. That's not a loving answer. That's going to say, hey, buddy, what's going on here? I know you're good, but you're just not doing this. You're just not getting this. Hold on. I'm going to, we're going to do a test and see what you know and what you don't know. And then we're going to work on it. We're going to fix what we can do. And we're going to get you up to speed in no time. How do you feel about this? That's what I think by loving is the teachers are the hardest working job out there. It's like, how are you going to divide your time between 25 kids? You have to advocate and say to your school, we need as much help as I can get, a couple assistant readers in here to help me out. But to be able to work with the kids and just ask the loving and questions with empathy, like, hey, what can I do? How can I help? What do you feel bad about? And that kind of stuff, that's compassion and that's love. And that's what I think it is. But I just want to just close on it is because there's this thing called the worldwide internet, you can ask that same question to other teachers and other groups all across the internet. And you're going to get all of these different opinions on it. And I think that's a really great question.
And I also think that we should learn Ninja first. If we learn Ninja first, then we deal with reading, then we deal with writing, then we deal with everything else. But if we be a Ninja first, then we know how to defend everything around us. Why not?
Why not?
So I think, is there anything else in the chat? People who write long things, it's taxing.
I noticed there was something there, but I looked at it and thought
it's a bit taxing, but anyway, I think that's it. It's been beautiful, and I love that we are all together from all parts of the world, and we share same stories, different ideas, and I also believe that we are one. Harvey, I do believe this very clearly. Martin, I look. It doesn't matter where I'm traveling in the world. If advocacy has to be done, it's done. Yes, you might be having something in your hand. I might be having a pen in mine. Whatever it is, who cares? The fact is that we are who we are, and I think that should be respected and emulated. So I think there is Mashrad Khan who's there, and Mashrad, if you could just close the talk, it would be beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kabir, Martin, Harvey. It was really a very engaging and a very stimulating, discussion. A lot of perspectives, different perspectives, but also a lot of commonality, no matter in which part of the world you are. As a student, you all and students continue to face similar problems when it comes to going to school and education. So I think that is what brings us all close together, because our experiences are the same, whether we are, students or teachers or educators or professionals working with students with differences, learning differences. The struggles, I think, is the same. And once you are able to cope with it, and come out of it and achieve success in life, I think the pleasure, the joy, the jubilation is also the same for all of us. I really, from the bottom of my heart, want to thank the three of you, because in spite of the hectic schedule, all of you took time out. I know that it's not easy for you all to have taken this time out. And not only that, you have stayed beyond the stipulated time. So thank you so much. So I'm really, really grateful to all of you. Kabir, thank you so much for, the coordination and moderating. Kabir is someone we can rely on. I just had to tell him, Kabir, I'm inviting Martin, Javi, and the others, and I would want you to moderate, and he very willingly accepted it, and he's carried this whole show on his shoulders. I have been just sitting and, enjoying it, let me put it that way. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you
and
so
I'm
much.
sure, like Javi said, that now we are like a community, a global community. The internet has made it, so convenient and easy for us to meet, interact. And yes, something like this we would not have imagined before the pandemic. So whenever it comes to, meeting online, having webinars, I always thank the pandemic for it, because that's what I think, got the world, together, made it a very, very small place and a platform for all of us to meet and interact. Which before that, we always thought, talking to people across the globe is such a difficult task. We would love to hear so-and-so. We would love to hear Javi. We would love to hear Martin. We would love to hear Sally Shavitz and so on. But how, Louisa Modes, but how do we get to hear them? But the pandemic has introduced us to all of them and given us the opportunity to listen to all of them. And I'm sure we'll continue with these sessions and enlightening discussions. As Kabir said, the journey of you and others like you with differences does not end. But let me tell you, Kabir, our journey also continues. So just like your journey continues, even our journey continues. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you all of you. It was really a pleasure having you all.
Thank you.
And it was great to make new friends, as you say. It's amazing. So one day we want Javi in India, we want Martin in India, and we're gonna make a movie. Why not?
I think Martin is coming in India. Yes, Martin.
So Javi, you're next. You have to come to India, and we can make our own film over here. You have enough.
I can't wait.
We have enough.
Can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. I'll send you a trailer of what we're working on. And Louisa Motes is in it, and many of the experts, and I really do appreciate it. I do think we should stay in touch, and I do think, because I do know that in the United States, people who are in vast different areas communicate and relate, and I think there's nothing wrong with doing it on the globe, because we know that it's the same story happening over and over again. And I know there's mothers that are worried about their children, and I don't know why the mothers don't start, mothers in India start their own decoding dyslexia, and they could work, and there's tools here on this thing called the internet where you can bring, 5 minutes of a clip that we just talked about, or 5 minutes of these other things, and show them to your schools and your decision makers, your policy makers.
Sorry to cut, but there's a lot of mothers who are doing exactly what you say, but they may not be in the forefront. But trust me, they're in the background. They're doing a lot, but unfortunately, we have our issues in society, and they don't want to come to the forefront. But there's so many who are doing, and I've worked with a lot of them. So yes, what you say, I'm definitely proud, and I know a lot of mothers who are doing the great job.
That's good. Well, thank them for us.
I will do. So thank you so much, all of you, and it's really been amazing. And for 3 dyslexic on a panel, come on, guys, we got it. It's simple. It's easy. It's not a problem. So anyway, thank you so much, all of you, and the guests. Thank you so much for attending. I know it's late, and I know you have your families to be with. Like mine, my children. I hope they are watching and they're with us. I know my wife is. So anyway, guys, thank you so much. Martin will definitely be in touch. Next time in England, we'll be with you. And Harvey, thank you so much for spending the time. And we will speak more for sure. Yeah.
Much love and respect. Much love and respect.
Everybody. Okay, guys.
Peace
namaste.
Out.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Namaste.
Okay.
Bye-bye. You all come back now. You hear?
We will do.
Thank you. Thank you.